most recent story in the financial world, especially in Nigeria, is that the federal government has said that it will not go back on its plan to review the country's currency. Let's shed more light on that. So we heard the Minister of National Planning yesterday saying that the introduction of the 5,000 naira notes into the nation's money markets is a fait accompli, according to the federal government. It's saying that President Goodluck Jonathan had approved the proposal to print the 5,000 naira denomination. He added that government would push ahead with the printing. He also said that this latest move will not lead to inflation in the country and the economy, unlike how some people may have represented it. He said that it's going to lead to, it will not lead to high inflation. As an economist, he said he has been a deputy governor in the central bank. That was when Professor Chukwuma Soludo was in the office as a governor of the central bank. Okay, let's move away from that. We'll track this for you on subsequent editions of the program. All right, we all saw when the federal government actually launched its second edition of the UWIN program, a UWIN initiative that was aimed at developing young entrepreneurs in the country. But we'll go a little step further today as to examining how has Nigeria been able to handle its human capacity developments. And here to look at this issue and shed more light into them is Michael Adeleye. He's a human capital development expert. Good morning.
Good morning.
Thank you for joining us on the program.
My pleasure.
I'm sure you watched issues in the news in the past few days where the federal government is trying to empower young people to go into businesses, be entrepreneurs, and explore the opportunities
of course,
in the economy.
To be quite honest with you, it was a very great initiative, and I'm quite pleased with it. But the fundamentals that meant to be looked into properly, for my own judgment, it's not been looked into properly. I actually have been in the industry, in the labor industry, human capital development for over 18 years, and there are a catalogue of issues that I think the government particularly are meant to look into to be able to solve this problem. The UWIN initiative is a great initiative, to be quite honest with you, but there are a catalogue of issues that I think the government should put in place.
What issues do you think they should look into?
We're talking about tens of thousands or perhaps millions of job seekers in this country. And when you look at the basic fundamentals of why we haven't, because on paper you have Nigeria happens to have one of the largest unemployment rates in the world and of today. And if you look critically into what actually has caused or generated for us to have all this issue, I mean, we're talking about practical experience. You will find out today that most of our graduates that we have in this country today don't have the basic practical experience. And if I'm an employer and I need to employ someone to work for me, for example, I'm going to pay this person money, a salary or wages to say. Now, if I'm going to pay you, I'm not paying you per se, I'm paying the skills and the wealth of experience you're bringing over to me. Now, if you don't have this experience, then why will I employ you in the first place? Now, if you look at that, the basis of that, I mean, most of our graduates today, they spend 4 or 5 years at the university. They graduate without no iota of practical experience. Now, my own solution to this is there is no what we call voluntary work experience anymore or any longer in this country, whereby you allow people to actually, when they have holidays, when they have breaks in schools and so on and so forth, to begin to do voluntary work. You see, what I found in this country...
Voluntary work.
Voluntary work, yes. Now, the reason for that is, you see, you're going to think as a job seeker or as an undergraduate that you're offering your services for free, but it's not for free. You're the main benefactor, because by the time you go into work for XYZ Limited, they're going to monitor you, they're going to manage you. I mean, that space you're occupying is costing money as well.
Can I just come in at this point? If they talk about voluntary work and you see a young graduate, we'll get back to the issue of entrepreneurship because I think we're trying to blend both on this program. Now, if you're looking at a young graduate, from what you've just said, who has no work experience, and you're telling him to do voluntary work, it's good in one part, and what if that is looking forward to getting something from it, to take care of himself. It means someone will just get a job, having to do a job without having to get paid.
I saw the question. I mean, before you actually become a graduate, these are the steps you need to have taken before you become a graduate. Because if you don't take, you see, there is a price for everything. Now, the only way forward, I keep saying this all the time, I've been to several seminars, look, you need to begin to engage people to do voluntary work right from when they're in schools. I mean, this is going to help them to acquire some skills and experience, because when you graduate after 4 years at university and you have no single 1 or 2 days or 1 week experience that you've worked somewhere, it's absolutely going to be very difficult for you to be able to get someone to employ you because you have no iota of experience from anywhere. But if you do begin to do voluntary work from year 1, year 2, year 3. By the time you graduate, I mean, you're going to have all to come together around about, say, 1 or 2 years experience on your resume, which is going to help you further. And also, I mean, if I come to work for you, for example, voluntarily, I mean, I'm opening a window for myself to be able to expose who I am, my dedication, my experience, what I can do for you, and so on and so forth. Now, it's voluntary, but eventually, if I'm very good, dedicated, productive, you're going to look at me one day and say, hang on, this chap is very good, he knows what he's doing. Let's give him something, maybe transport money, and so on and so forth.
It could be a little bit difficult in our own environment. Perhaps what you're talking about obtains or exists in other economies of the world. Yeah. But in a place like Nigeria, for instance, where your intention of taking up a job is because you want something. As a young graduate or an undergraduate in the situation, you want something to pay your school fees, you have to pay your tuition fees, and all of this. And how do you strike the balance? Having taken a job, you don't get paid, and you think you're going to stay there, and you have needs to meet. What's your take about that?
What I would say about that is, you see, you sow now and reap later. You have to do something to actually be able to become marketable in the future. Now, you want something. Of course you want something. Now, if you go to do voluntary work, you're meant to be paying the person or the company that you actually, you've gone to actually go and do the voluntary work, because they're going to manage you, they're going to mentor you, they're going to train you, and that's going to take their resources, their time and everything to actually train you, and you are the person gaining all the major benefactor. So it's actually very, very important that we actually engage all our students right from day one from the university to begin to do voluntary work. That's one of the issues. Secondly, I mean, we're talking about ICT skills, and I've heard over and over the government initiative and the money being pumped into ICT around the country. But how are these things being implemented? That is my question. Now, I give a very good example. I mean, I had one candidate that actually came for an interview with us, and one of my consultants was actually interviewing this lady, and I was opportune to be there and actually look at the whole scenario. And I asked this lady, and I said, what exactly do you want us to do for you? She said, you want a job. She was a graduate, just finished her youth service corps. Now, what amazes me was, she has never, in 4 or 5 years of education, used a computer or a laptop. Now, how do you want to help such a person to be able to get a career or an opportunity? Now, when I asked her, how version was this? I'm blaming the government. They weren't provided with any computer at school. I'm blaming the institution. And I look at it and I say, look, there's nowhere under the heaven where a government would provide 100% for a citizen. I mean, what are you doing for yourself to be able to counter this problem? And I look at her. She had 3 BlackBerry phones with her. And I said, you're blaming the government, you're blaming the institution. What have you done for yourself? If I auction 2 of these BlackBerry phones, I'm going to be able to maybe get about 30,000, 40,000 naira. A small used laptop would cost you around about 20,000, 25,000. Why don't you invest in yourself to be able to get a laptop, or perhaps go to cyber cafes and spend 100, 200 naira every day to educate yourself? That isn't a problem. But the government has a blame in that as well. They spend millions, perhaps hundreds of millions, in giving out books, in giving out, saying reading culture and so on and so forth. We are too much into theoretical issues in this country. Our practical advantages are dwindling.